I wasn't listening to the conversation anymore. I was counting the lights on the ceiling, small, warm bulbs in a straight line above the table. 1, 2, 3, 14. 14 lights. I remember that clearly, because I'd reached 14 at the exact moment she said the sentence that ended my marriage. Before that, my mind was somewhere else. Floating. Detached. That's what I do when I'm uncomfortable. I drift. I nod at the wrong moments, smile half a second too late, pretend I belong in rooms that feel like they were built to quietly reject me. The room smelled like citrus cleaner and expensive cologne. Everyone else seemed perfectly at ease, leaning back in their chairs, laughing too loudly. I was sitting straight, hands folded in my lap, afraid I'd knock over a glass and confirm whatever silent judgment they'd already made about me. I hadn't wanted to be there. She knew that. Business dinners always made me feel like a coat someone forgot to hang properly, present, but unnecessary. Still, I came. I always came when she asked. I told myself that's what supportive husbands do. The conversation drifted from quarterly results to inside jokes I didn't understand. Someone mentioned how relationships change when success enters the picture. Another person laughed and said money clarifies things. That's when she turned slightly toward me, not fully, just enough to include me as an object, and said, "Some people are just temporary chapters. You don't realize it until you outgrow them." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look angry. She said it calmly, almost thoughtfully, like she was sharing a mature insight she'd recently discovered. The table went quiet in that strange, polite way. Not shocked silence. More like recognition. Like everyone knew exactly who she meant. I felt my face heat up. My ears buzzed. For a second, I honestly wondered if I was being dramatic. If maybe this was just one of those vague, philosophical comments people make at dinners like this. But then she smiled. Not at me. Past me. Towards someone across the table who nodded back slowly. That's when I stood up. I didn't announce anything. Didn't push my chair loudly. I just rose, picked up my coat, and walked away while she was still holding her glass. No one stopped me. No one said my name. It was like I'd already been erased. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. My hands were shaking, and I hated that they were shaking. I hate how my body betrays me before my brain catches up. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, staring at the reflection in the dark window, trying to understand how a single sentence could feel heavier than years of arguments we never had. My phone buzzed. Once. I didn't check it. Because as much as it hurt, as much as my chest felt like it was caving inward, one thought kept looping in my head, louder than everything else. She didn't say it by accident. She said it because she thought it was already over. And the worst part? I think everyone at that table knew before I did. That was the night I walked away, not knowing yet that it was only the first thing I'd lose. I didn't go home that night. I walked past my car, past the garage we used to share, past the valet stand where the guy barely looked up from his phone. I just walked, block after block through streets that smelled like smoke and old rain, until I found a closed bookstore with a bench out front. That's where I sat, staring at the reflection of myself in the darkened glass. I must have looked like I was waiting for someone. That's what a woman asked me. She walked by around midnight and glanced over, said, "Waiting for someone?" I almost said yes. Isn't that the story of my life? Waiting for her to remember who I was. Waiting for her to choose me again. Waiting for her to stop measuring me against the version of herself she kept upgrading every year. But no, I wasn't waiting. I was processing. Or trying to. Because the thing that kept playing in my head wasn't just the sentence she said. It was how no one was surprised by it. That meant something. That meant they'd heard things. Seen things. And if they had, how had I missed them? By the time the sun started bleeding across the rooftops, my phone had 7 unread messages from her. The first was casual. "Where did you go?" The second more clipped. "Are you serious?" Then came the spiral. "Conrad, answer me. What the hell are you doing?" And finally, the one that made me feel sick. "You're making a scene over nothing. Come back before this turns into drama." Drama. That's what she called it. I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself not to type something I'd regret. I went to my brother's apartment instead. He was still asleep, didn't even hear me come in. I used the spare key I'd never returned. I lay down on his couch, still wearing that blazer, and stared at the ceiling. This one didn't have 14 lights. Just a sad little fan spinning lazily in circles. My mind wandered to the guy across the table, the one she smiled at. He wasn't laughing when she said what she said. He was studying her. Quiet. Too comfortable. Like he knew it was about him. I didn't know his name, but I knew his face. And suddenly, all these moments I dismissed as harmless. Texts with no names. Late meetings that ran long. That new gym membership she said was just to clear her head. They weren't isolated anymore. They connected. And they pointed in a direction I'd been too afraid to look. But now I was looking. And what I saw made my stomach twist. Because what if that dinner wasn't just a careless comment? What if it was her way of making her exit official? Surrounded by her people, speaking her truth out loud, testing if I'd finally disappear. And I had. I disappeared. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because if she really thought I was the temporary chapter, she was about to find out how the story ends when the forgotten character picks up the pen. By the time I made it back to our house, the sun was fully up, and the silence felt unnatural, like the whole street had agreed to hold its breath. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Of course it wasn't. She always stayed behind to wrap things up after events like that. Or so she claimed. I didn't take off my shoes. I didn't drop my keys in the bowl like usual. I moved through the house like a stranger in a museum. Everything looked familiar, but nothing felt like it was mine anymore. The throw blanket still folded perfectly over the couch. The framed wedding photo on the hallway table. The smell of her perfume still faint in the air upstairs. But it all felt hollow, like a stage set someone forgot to pack up. I stood in our bedroom doorway for a while, staring at her side of the bed. The sheets were undisturbed. That should have comforted me. It didn't. Then I saw it, her work laptop, left open on the dresser. That was rare. She was obsessively private about her work, always closing tabs if I even walked by too fast. And that's when it happened. The moment I knew I wasn't just being paranoid, that I wasn't overreacting. She was still logged in, and the screen wasn't even locked. Now look, I'm not proud of what I did next. I know some people will say I invaded her privacy, but something primal took over. Something sharp and raw that didn't care about boundaries anymore. I opened her email, typed one word in the search bar, hotel. And there it was. Not one, not two, but 5 different reservations. All made in her name. All for weekday nights. All for 2 guests. And all from the same booking site, registered under her professional email, not her personal one. Almost like she thought I'd never think to check. Most of them were months old. But the most recent? Last Tuesday. While I'd been pulling an all-nighter trying to fix a back-end issue for a client, she'd apparently been in a hotel suite 3 miles away. I felt something snap. Not in an explosive way. Not with rage. No, this was something worse. A quiet, cold click, like a door locking behind you. I kept digging. Clicked her calendar. Then her cloud storage. Then the messaging platform her office used. And that's where I found it. A folder, buried under shared files. Titled, Q1 Projections. Inside were exactly 6 screenshots. All from text conversations. Not between her and the guy across the table, but between her and a name I'd never seen. Devlin. They weren't work messages. They weren't even subtle. Last night was exactly what I needed. Being with you makes everything feel right again. I'm tired of pretending around him. He doesn't challenge me. Not like you do. You're my future. He just doesn't know it yet. That was the one that did it. That last one. You're my future. She wasn't having a fling. She was already building her next chapter. Without me, I was just the silence between sentences. The space before the next paragraph. I closed the laptop gently. Too gently. Like I didn't want to wake up the lie we'd been sleeping in. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my own hands like they didn't belong to me. I didn't cry. Not yet. That came later. But I did realize something important right then. Something horrifying and liberating all at once. This wasn't a collapse. It wasn't even a betrayal. It was a transition. She hadn't broken our life. She'd outgrown it. And she was hoping I'd go quietly. But I don't go quietly. Not anymore. I couldn't stay in that house. Not for another second. Every room felt like it was laughing at me. The kitchen, where she used to kiss me on the cheek while I stirred coffee. The living room, where we'd spent whole Sundays curled under a blanket watching reruns of shows I pretended to like just because she liked them. Even the hallway felt like it was whispering, "You missed it. You missed everything." I grabbed the laptop, stuffed it into my backpack like it was evidence, and maybe it was, and walked out without locking the door. I didn't even care. Let the whole world walk in and take whatever they wanted. Everything important had already been stolen. I went back to my brother's place. I didn't say a word when I walked in, and he didn't ask questions. He just handed me a mug of reheated coffee and nodded like he somehow already knew. That silence saved me. I didn't need advice. I didn't need comfort. I needed space to think. So I started reviewing the emails. Obsessively. Like I was piecing together a crime scene that had been right in front of me for months. And then I found something that wasn't a smoking gun. It was a nuclear bomb. An email from her assistant, confirming her flights for a leadership summit in Charleston 3 weeks ago. Except, she never went to Charleston. She told me the summit had been moved to Tampa. Gave me a whole rundown, weather delays, hotel mix-ups, some keynote speaker who talked for too long about digital branding. She even brought back a tiny bottle of Florida orange blossom lotion from the hotel spa. I remember because it made my eyes water. But here it was, clear as day, a hotel confirmation for Charleston. Not Florida. No spa. No summit. And the name on the reservation? Devlin R. Walters. They booked a suite. I felt sick. Physically sick. I stood up so fast I knocked over the mug of coffee, and it spilled across the kitchen counter. I didn't even bother cleaning it. I just stood there, hands gripping the edge of the sink, breathing through clenched teeth like I was bracing for impact. That trip was the same weekend I had food poisoning. I'd been curled up on the couch, texting her between trips to the bathroom. She sent me selfies, smiling in business casual outfits, standing in front of palm trees. She even told me she missed me, that she wished I was there. I believed her. I replied with "I miss you too." I actually meant it. I think I stared at the hotel confirmation for a full 10 minutes before I noticed something else. A note in the reservation comments section. Please have champagne waiting in the room. It's our anniversary. Our anniversary is in July. This was in October. An anniversary. Theirs. That hit harder than anything else. Because it wasn't just a fling. It wasn't even just betrayal. It was a parallel relationship. One with its own timeline, its own inside jokes, its own milestones. I was the shadow. The footnote. The guy she called stable in public while she toasted someone else behind my back. I wanted to scream. To confront her. To throw the evidence on the table and watch her face crumble. But I didn't. I wasn't ready. Because something inside me shifted. This wasn't going to end with a dramatic fight or a desperate plea for answers. No, I was going to finish this my way. And quietly. That scared me more than any outburst ever could. Because when the silent ones finally stand up, they don't come back. It was the following Thursday when I made my move. She had another after-hours strategy dinner with her department heads. I didn't say a word when she kissed my cheek that morning. I didn't flinch when she smiled and said, "Don't wait up. I might be late." She even tossed in a playful wink. And I smiled back like an idiot. Like I hadn't already seen the email from her calendar. Dinner with Devlin. 7:30 p.m. Crosswell Lounge. Table reserved under D. Walters. She thought she was 10 steps ahead of me. What she didn't know was that I had already reserved the table next to hers under another name. A fake one, just in case. Something bland. Ben Thomas. Sounds like a guy who blends into the background. Perfect. I arrived 10 minutes before they did. I chose a seat with a perfect side-angle view of their table, tucked slightly behind a tall plant wall and a half-broken lamp. I wasn't hiding. I didn't have to. People like them don't see people like me unless they're serving drinks or fixing Wi-Fi. I ordered water. That's all I could stomach. At 7:34, they walked in. She looked different. Not in a dramatic way, but more alive. More deliberate. She touched her hair in that nervous, flirty way I hadn't seen in months. She wore the dark blue dress she told me she didn't like anymore. Said it felt too tight. Funny. Didn't look too tight now. Devlin was everything I imagined. Confident. Overgroomed. Loud laugh. Perfect teeth. That kind of effortless arrogance that only comes from never having been told no for anything in his life. They didn't see me. They ordered a bottle of wine. Expensive. The same one we had on our 5th anniversary. They clinked glasses. He leaned in too close. She didn't pull back. And then she reached across the table and touched his hand. It wasn't the touch of a secret. It was the touch of something practiced. Familiar. Casual. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was embarrassment. Like I was watching a movie I didn't audition for, but somehow my whole life had been edited out of the script. Then Devlin pulled out a small black box. My breath caught. She didn't look surprised. In fact, she laughed softly, like it was an inside joke. He opened it. It wasn't a ring. It was a bracelet. Thin gold, engraved. I couldn't read it from where I sat, but I didn't need to. She reached out and let him fasten it onto her wrist. That was when something shifted in me. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Something colder. Something final. I got up, left a 20 on the table, and walked out without looking back. Again. But this time, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to a storage unit I hadn't used in years. Still had the key in my old wallet. Inside were boxes from before we got married. Old tax files. College books. A cheap safe I hadn't opened in a decade. Inside the safe was a folder. A copy of the prenup she insisted we didn't need, but my brother begged me to get. She signed it back when she thought I was going to build $1 million startup. She forgot all about it. I didn't. And when I opened it, I saw the clause I remembered. Infidelity, proven by digital evidence or physical surveillance, voids her claim to shared assets and property. Her signature sat there. Clear. Permanent. And just like that, the man she called safe became the man with every card in his hand. She didn't know it yet, but the goodbye she thought she controlled? I had just rewritten it. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even lie down. I just sat at my brother's kitchen table with the prenup open in front of me, and her bracelet burned into my memory. Not the design, not the gold. I kept seeing the way she smiled while he fastened it. The same way she used to smile at me when she thought no one was watching. But now, she smiled like I was a worn-out story she'd outgrown. By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I'd done too much of that in my head already. This wasn't about making her feel bad anymore. This was about making sure she couldn't walk away with everything while pretending she didn't burn it down first. I started simple. Screenshots. All of them. Emails, hotel confirmations, messages with Devlin. I organized them into a single folder, then printed hard copies. 2 sets. One for my lawyer. One for her. Next, I call my friend Felix. He's a licensed private investigator. The kind of guy who usually tracks corporate theft or cheating spouses. He owed me a favor from years ago. I didn't need him to find out if she was cheating. I already had that. I just needed confirmation. Photographic proof. One clear image. Felix didn't even ask for details. Send me his face, he said. You'll have what you need by the weekend. While Felix got to work, I took care of something else. I called my bank. Froze our joint savings. Transferred my personal checking account to a new one under my name only. Same with my retirement portfolio. She had no access to any of it, but I wasn't taking chances. Then I contacted the property manager. She didn't know this, but the house was in my name only. I'd bought it 2 years before we got married and never added her. Not legally. She'd never asked, and I'd never told her. Now, I was grateful for that oversight. Everything was lining up. That night, I went home. She was already there, sitting on the couch in her robe, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a secret life crumbling behind her. You didn't come home last night, she said, not looking up. Yeah, I replied. Stayed at Liam's. Got stuck fixing something for a client. She nodded slowly, still not meeting my eyes. You didn't text. You didn't either. That was all we said. That silence used to hurt. Now it felt like armor. I watched her closely. She looked nervous. Her foot tapped softly against the carpet. Her hair was tied up, but her bracelet, the one he gave her, was gone. Smart girl. Didn't want to risk questions. She was trying to play both roles, the professional wife and the passionate mistress. Too late for that. Over the next few days, I acted like nothing had changed. I kissed her forehead in the mornings. I made coffee. I asked how work was going. I even made dinner Thursday night, just like I always used to. She relaxed. She thought I was back in the dark. That whatever mood I'd been in had passed. Friday night, Felix sent me the photo. Devlin and Remy, locked in an embrace in the parking lot of a hotel. Her lips on his neck, his hand on her hip. Time-stamped. Crystal clear. Undeniable. Saturday, I printed one copy of the photo. I slid it into a plain white envelope, along with a copy of the prenup. No note. No explanation. Just facts. And then, as calmly as anything I've ever done, I laid it on the kitchen counter. I knew she had plans that night. She'd told me she was going out with the girls. Another lie. I let her get dressed, curl her hair, choose her heels like she wasn't standing on a trapdoor. And right before she left, she saw the envelope. I watched her fingers freeze mid-reach. She looked at me, confused. What's this? You should read it when you get back, I said quietly, while you still have a house to come home to. Then I walked past her, out the front door, and left her standing there like a character in someone else's ending. She had no idea. But the life she built on secrets was about to collapse, and I wasn't going to lift a finger to save it. I didn't go far. Just a small cabin rental outside Fairhill. No Wi-Fi, spotty reception, fireplace, silence, and just enough warmth to keep me from freezing while I stared into the flames and thought about how someone you love can rot right in front of you without you noticing the smell. It took her an hour and a half to realize I wasn't coming back that night. The first call came at 9:47 p.m. I let it ring. The second one, 2 minutes later. Then 6 texts. Then 10. By midnight, I had 22 missed calls and enough voicemails to fill my storage. I didn't listen to a single one. I just stared at the phone lighting up like a heartbeat, each buzz weaker than the last. In the morning, it stopped. I thought that was it, that she'd finally given up the act and started figuring out where to go next. I imagined her pacing around the house, envelopes still open on the kitchen counter, wondering how I'd found out, wondering what else I knew. Then, mid-afternoon, she sent one final message. Please come home. I made a mistake. Just talk to me. Not I'm sorry. Not I love you. Just I made a mistake. Like she'd dropped a glass, not shattered a marriage. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew if I did, it would reopen something I'd worked too hard to seal shut. That evening, I finally listened to one voicemail. It started with silence, then a shaky breath, then her voice, small, unsure, like she was reaching for the version of me that used to save her from herself. Conrad, this isn't what it looks like. Please. That dinner, that hotel, the messages, I swear it wasn't serious. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just felt alone. You were always so distant lately. I thought you didn't care anymore. I thought I had to look somewhere else for. Click. I stopped the message right there. Not serious. She booked suites. She wore the bracelet. She smiled at him like I didn't exist. If that wasn't serious, then what was? Later that night, my lawyer sent me a text confirming the packet had been delivered to her work address. Inside, the prenup clause, the photos, and a clean draft of the divorce papers. It wasn't vindictive. It was just necessary. She had made her choice. I was just giving her the formality of living with it. The following morning, I drove back into town. Not to see her. Not yet. I went to the notary. Then the bank. Then the office where we kept our joint safety deposit box. She never bothered checking it. Always said, "You handle the boring stuff." Funny thing about boring stuff. It's usually where the power hides. Inside that box was everything she didn't expect me to remember. The original house deed. The car title. Copies of our insurance policies and investment portfolios. All in my name. She never asked how we split things. She assumed. Because I was the quiet one. The soft one. The fool. But fools remember details. By nightfall, I'd reset every account, blocked her card access, rerouted mail, and had all legal documents secured. Every trace of the life we built together was now sorted. Neatly, calmly, without a single word from me. Because I wanted her to feel it. Not the rage. Not the yelling. But the silence. The silence of knowing the man she thought was safe, quiet, and too soft to walk away had already walked out and closed every door behind him. I wasn't there when she finally came home. I didn't want to be. Some goodbyes aren't meant to be spoken. They're meant to be felt in the echo of an empty room, in the way silence wraps around you like a reminder that something used to live there, but doesn't anymore. She found my wedding ring on the windowsill, right where she used to set her coffee every morning. She found my key on the kitchen counter, next to a sealed envelope. Inside was no yelling, no insults, just one printed page, folded neatly. It read, "You were right. You outgrew me. But you forgot something important. I wasn't standing still. I was building a life that deserved honesty, loyalty, and respect. You chose passion over stability. I choose peace over pretending." I left the rest of the house untouched. She could keep the furniture, the decor, the walk-in closet she always bragged about to her friends. I didn't need those things anymore. They were relics of a life built on compromise and quiet betrayals. As for me, I started over. Not in some dramatic, movie-style way. There was no spontaneous move to a new city or impulsive haircut or tropical beach montage. Just stillness. A slow rebuild. A reintroduction to myself. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. Signed the lease in my name only. Set up my workspace by the window. Started saying yes to things I used to avoid. I reconnected with my sister, Someone I hadn't seen in years because Remy never liked how blunt she was. And you know what? That bluntness was exactly what I needed. One afternoon, I was sitting at a quiet cafe, finishing some back-end updates for a new client, when the waitress complimented my code. I laughed. It caught me off guard. She said she used to study computer science before switching to design. We talked. Laughed again. Not forced laughter. Not polite dinner party giggles. Real laughter. Her name was Mira. Not flashy. Not perfect. But real. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. She asked questions. She listened. She didn't look past me like I was filler between bigger moments. Months passed. Remy tried reaching out once. An email. Short. Apologetic. She said she didn't recognize herself anymore and hoped I was doing well. I never replied. Because I was doing better than well. I was finally free. Not just from her, but from the version of me that thought being needed was the same thing as being loved. Now, when I look back at that dinner, the one where she said I was just a temporary chapter, I don't feel small anymore. Because sometimes, the chapter you were willing to burn down ends up becoming someone else's beginning. And I'm finally living mine.